Hi everyone, I'm Hayley Blunden. I study workplace communication challenges, and I'm really excited to present some work in progress today with my colleagues Andrew Brodsky and Ethan Burris. And the particular workplace communication challenge I'm going to talk about today is employee voice. And for those of you who are not from a management audience, I'm going to define it for you. So the discretionary provision of information intended to improve organizational functioning to someone inside the organization with perceived authority to act, and for us today that's going to be managers, even though this information might challenge the status quo. So voluntary provision of information on the part of employees to someone superior to them that might challenge the status quo with a benevolent motive. So this is like speaking up to your managers. Why do we care about employee voice? Well, it's been associated with a variety of positive organizational outcomes. So performance, reduced turnover, motivation. So we care about employees speaking up, but prior research hasn't attended to how the ways in which we communicate might affect how we speak up. And one particular form of communication has been on the rise in the past few decades, and that's text-based virtual communication. So you don't need me to tell you that this has become really central to our work, with some estimates of 30% of employee time dedicated to email, and some employees checking their email, 37% checking their email constantly. So we're going to ask the question, does this pervasive use of text-based virtual communication, so email, chat, affect employee voice expression? And the specific question we're going to look at with our data is, do those who communicate more with their managers via more text-based communication speak up more or less or neither? And we had reason to think that this relationship might play out in either direction. So on one hand, text-based virtual communication has been associated with increased anonymity of the recipient. So this has been associated with things like more aggressive behavior online. So you might think that those who rely more on text-based virtual communication might actually speak up more, might be willing to challenge those around them more. On the other hand, text-based virtual communication has also been associated with reduced trust. So in that respect, you might think that those who communicate more via text might actually express less voice. So to begin to answer this question, we conducted a survey with a finance client services group at an accounting firm in Australia. Here's what kind of the distribution of the seniority in that data looks like. It was male heavy, it's an accounting firm. So here's going to be our primary outcome measure. So I gave my manager suggestions about how to make work better. I challenge my manager about the problems around here. I speak up to my manager with ideas to address employees' needs and concerns. Our independent measure is going to be the percentage of communication that's conducted via text. And here, in this particular context, that's email and chat, although the results that I'm going to show you will hold if I exclude chat and just look at email. So it's also important to control for some other variables that might affect people's willingness to speak up, as well as their communication medium choices. So we're going to control for some demographic information and for some relational measures, so some measures of the employee's relationship with their manager. So things like leader-member exchange, whether you feel supported by your manager, and how much you interact with your manager, and whether you're in the same building or a different building. So let's see if our data checks out. Yes, as expected, leader-member exchange, which is like feeling supported by your manager, is positively associated with voice, as is manager interaction. The more, if you are in a different building from your manager, you communicate more via text, so that checks out as well. So what did we find? Is text-based communication positively or negatively associated with voice expression? So we actually find a negative relationship. And we find that this holds when we control for all of those demographic and relational variables that we could measure. So we wanted to understand a little bit more about the mechanism, about what was going on behind this. So we conducted interviews. And in those interviews, we asked about employees' voice expressions, so how much they're speaking up. And then we probed for their communication medium use. And what seemed to emerge is that those employees who were communicating a lot more via text perceived fewer windows or fewer opportunities to express this voice in order to speak up. And they mention these opportunities in the context of medium characteristics, the relational level, and the organizational level. So we're really excited about this initial data, and we have new data that we're going to be analyzing that has a more objective measure, not a self-report survey measure, of both communication patterns and of employee voice, which is going to be manager-rated, excuse me. And we're also planning to conduct an experience sampling study in order to dig deeper into the mechanism. So with that, I'll thank you, and I'll ask if you want to challenge my views. Yes. So that's really interesting. So this, to answer your question very specifically, this data does not look at that. I think it would be interesting in that making it anonymous may remove some of the trust factor that could be going on here. So the fact that you're going to have to deal with your manager's reaction to that, and that if it's anonymous, you kind of would avoid that. But I think we're interested in employee voice, in employees directly speaking up, because then they're able to kind of potentially work with their manager in order to come to a good solution for their issue. But thank you. I think it'd be interesting to look at. Let's talk later.